The Great Pyramids of Egypt have puzzled explorers, geologists, and historians for millennia. Did they serve as the pharaohs' last resting places, or did they hide something more sinister? The question of whether these colossal constructions were constructed by highly skilled and coordinated labor, or by slaves, has generated countless arguments. What mysteries are concealed behind their historic walls? The most important question of all is whether an unexplored chamber, possibly even the Pharaoh Khufu's hidden tomb, is still out there. Come discover one of the biggest mysteries in history as we reveal the truth about the pyramids' construction and their secrets. The pyramids were constructed as enormous tombs made of gleaming white limestone to permanently conceal the terrible secrets of the deceased. They have inspired actual and perplexing scientific problems for thousands of years, as well as wonderful stories and folklore. How were these mausoleums built to within inches of being hundreds of feet high? Why was a country committed to burying its dead? The men that transported billions of tons of stone were who? The pyramids' defenses are now being undermined by science, which is also exposing the truth and dispelling old myths. Standing guard over Cairo like enormous sentinels are the pyramids of ancient Egypt. These stone giants, which were constructed almost 2,000 years before the time of Christ, nevertheless enthrall and confound archaeologists who are trying to figure out their origins and function. The reason Egypt has such a hold on us, in my opinion, is that they had access to stone and used it to construct the first skyscrapers in history. We recognize something about ourselves in that. The true function of these enormous superstructures has been obscured by thousands of years of myth and mythology, and the builders of the pyramids left no documentation of how they constructed them. The pyramids themselves are the only hints. To find out how these remarkable structures were formed and who used basic, archaic methods to construct them, scientists must examine the stones. These monuments are extremely well designed. The high-tech of antiquity is the Great Pyramid. The accomplishment scope is astounding. The 2.3 million pieces that make up the 481-foot-tall Great Pyramid can weigh up to 50 tons. Nearly 6 million tons, or 16 Empire State Buildings, make up the entire edifice. It stood as the world's tallest structure for 38 centuries. Furthermore, it is an extremely accurate engineering feat. Less than about 2 inches separates the 755-foot sides in length. The building's exterior isn't the only remarkable aspect. Constructed from one of nature's toughest rocks, the interior contains a network of corridors and chambers. Built by a tribe that had not yet found the wheel, the stonework is so accurate that even a credit card cannot slide between the blocks. One thing that amazes me about the Great Pyramid is its accuracy. The first Egyptologists attempted to use dynamite to blast their way to the truth. Although they broke inside the pyramid's hidden rooms, they might have caused more damage than they found. In particular, dynamite may have destroyed hints left by the ancient Egyptians that may have provided us with additional information about the pyramids or their construction. Archaeologists are now searching for wonders buried deep within the stones using the newest technology. I firmly think that the pyramid still contains the king's secret burial chamber. For other archaeologists, however, the real wonder lies in the buildings themselves. The Egyptians' ability to construct the pyramids using the technology at their disposal is the biggest enigma, not the existence of hidden chambers. Building pyramids was a skill that the ancient Egyptians did not acquire overnight. They went from constructing crude mud structures to the Great Pyramid at Giza after many years of trial and error and one near catastrophe. Around 2600 BCE, the first pyramids were constructed on the west bank of the Nile River. The Step Pyramid at Saqqara, which may be the world's oldest stone structure, was the first design. This was a first in construction history, rising 204 feet from the arid sands. It climbed in a sequence of levels, or steps, rather than having smooth sloping edges. 60 years later, the pharaoh Snefru constructed the first real pyramids with flat sides. The Great Pyramid, the first and biggest of the three pyramids at Giza, was constructed by his son Khufu. Then at Saqqara, several smaller, elaborately decorated pyramids were constructed. It is a long-standing mystery how the Egyptians constructed these enormous superstructures using the primitive technology of their day. Surveying the location and marking out the pyramid in the proper alignment constituted the first challenge. They carefully considered the location to make sure the bedrock could sustain millions of tons of limestone. The edifice was then laid out by the ancient architects with the north, south, east, and west points of the compass on each side. The ancient Egyptians lacked the modern technologies of laser sighting devices and digital compasses. Some analysts believe they turned their attention to the sky instead. True north can be determined by tracking the rise and set of the polar stars. To create a flat horizon, the architects first constructed a semicircular wall. They could write a star's rising and setting times on this wall as it moved northward across the night sky. Due north would be shown by a line drawn precisely halfway between these markers. This low-tech technique alone allowed for the Great Pyramid to be aligned with amazing precision. Less than a 20th of a degree separates it from true north. Robert Bauval, an engineer and author on pyramids, has himself aligned contemporary structures. The accuracy attained by the ancient Egyptians astounds him. It beats me how they did it, and I've set out buildings with optical instruments with the aid of cranes to place the stones, and sometimes I don't get them that accurate. The architects drew an alignment line that forms one side of the pyramid's footprint after calculating due north. Next, they used measuring rods and ropes to mark out the remaining three sides. The engineers then excavated a level base out of the bedrock to sustain the enormous edifice after deciding on the pyramid's design. A precise and stable pyramid required a foundation that was absolutely horizontal. Dennis Stocks, a British engineer, is an authority on the building methods of ancient Egypt. Many of the pyramid building histories have been revealed by his studies. Spirit levels and lasers are used to level modern foundations. According to Stocks, the Egyptians employed water to create a smooth, level base for the pyramid. The ancient Egyptians used a channel like this one here, only it would stretch all the way along 755 feet, the whole side of the pyramid. And then they would put some water in, and it would act as a kind of spirit level. He may be certain that the base of the pyramid will be genuinely level and horizontal if he just follows the water's line along it. According to Stocks, a large water trench of this kind may have been constructed around the entire pyramid's perimeter. The engineers could make sure the entire base was level in this way. However, the Egyptians employed yet another clever mechanism to ensure that all 2.3 million blocks remained level as the pyramid rose higher. As you can see, a line is marked directly behind the hanging plumb line to calibrate it for use. This way, when you test it on a surface and the hanging plumb line coincides with the mark, we know that it is showing a truly horizontal flat surface. The tool I'm using is made of wood and is called the A-frame. It is simply two pieces of wood joined at a 90-degree angle at the top, with a crossbar and a hanging plumb line. Now that the land was leveled and the plan was set, construction could start. The Egyptians required stone, millions of tons of it. But how did they mine such vast quantities without the use of jackhammers, dynamite, or even iron tools? 1/3 of a billion cubic feet of stone were used in the construction of the 18 major pyramids that were finished in 500 years during the Old Kingdom of ancient Egypt. This would have been an enormous undertaking for even the most advanced engineering firms with the most advanced technology. but the ancient Egyptians were able to accomplish it with the most basic tools. Dennis Stocks is going to Tura, which is close to Cairo, and is where a large portion of the premium limestone used in the pyramids was quarried. He thinks copper, a soft metal, was used by the Egyptians to carve this stone. Based on ancient Egyptian antiquities, Stocks has constructed replica copper chisels. By using those, I feel that I am as close as I can get within the mind of ancient Egyptian workers and how they felt. However, how can copper be used to cut limestone when it is a soft, pliable metal that bends and blunts easily? The tools I'm holding right now are the original ones that the ancient artisans would have used. Additionally, this copper tool is formed like a chisel and is struck with a mallet. To accomplish this, position the mallet, lay the chisel on the stone at an angle, and then deliver fairly forceful blows. Large pieces of stone will come away. That's all right for rough working, but we have another copper chisel that can be used for more fine working in order to get much less stone off at a time, but will bring the surface closer towards a surface that is totally flat. According to Stocks's research, soft copper chisels can be used to carve limestone blocks. It turns out that some good fortune was unknowingly bestowed upon the Egyptians. Egyptian copper was not pure. It contained minor amounts of arsenic, according to a thorough chemical investigation of ancient artifacts. Fortunately, this impurity keeps the copper crystals together and strengthens the copper compared to its pure state. The majority of the 2.3 million slabs of limestone in the Great Pyramid were quarried by Egyptian stonemasons thanks to this chemistry-related accident. Although limestone, a relatively soft rock, is employed extensively in the pyramids, the Egyptians also used granite, a considerably harder stone. For the most crucial portions of the design, like the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid, they used this firm, exquisitely colored stone. Furthermore, this granite is completely unaffected by copper chisels. Granite can be cut with sophisticated modern quarrying equipment, yet the Egyptians had not even mastered the art of forging iron. The specific method by which they chopped these 50-ton blocks of granite has remained a mystery to generations of archaeologists. However, the technological enigma is now being partially unraveled by experimental archaeology. Dennis Stocks believes he knows the solution. He thinks copper saws, was used by the Egyptians. They weren't just any saws either. They had no teeth at all. This material is very hard granite, and you need a special tool to cut it. This is a copper saw, but it has no teeth at all. So you ask, what will cut it? Well, it's sand, but the quartz crystals in the sand embed themselves in the softer copper, and the saw does the cutting by dragging those crystals back and forth in the slot. Slowly, bit by bit, the stone is cut all the way through. Even with these saws, the ancient Egyptians could only have cut granite at a rate of 2 cubic inches per hour, which would have taken 4 months to chisel out the sarcophagus inside the Great Pyramid. Quartz crystals in the sand are so hard that they gradually grind through the solid granite. The Egyptians had to cut enormous amounts of rock with soft copper and a cutting edge made of sand and arsenic, then put these blocks together to create a monument that would last. However, why did the Egyptians adopt this now iconic shape? And why did they decide to build a pyramid in the first place? The pyramid is supported by a wide base and low center of gravity. More than 2/3 of the weight is in the bottom third of its height, because they wanted a stable shape, like a pile of gravel. However, their values had an impact on the design in addition to the engineering. Of course, there is a symbology in all of this, but a mound is quite stable when people desire to climb it for stability. The pyramid shape may have been inspired by several mystical ideas. One theory examines the veneration of the Benben stone, a mysterious stone. The pyramidion, or capstones, that form the very top of the pyramids are modeled on the original pyramid-shaped Benben stone. But no one knows where this legendary stone came from. Some believe it was a meteorite, and it has long since disappeared. Is this the reason pyramids are constructed in the way they are? However, given how important the sun was to Egyptian religion at the time, there is another possibility. Perhaps the sun itself held the secret. One way to interpret the pyramid is as a stone depiction of a sunbeam descending from the sky. Sometimes the beam formed when the sun comes out from behind clouds looks like a pyramid. Therefore, a stone image of a sunbeam may exist. Perhaps, however, the Egyptians were drawn to the pyramid's purely geometrical shape. Ironically, the earliest pyramid, known as the Step Pyramid, rose in 6 distinct stages and lacked smooth, sloping sides. 60 years after the Step Pyramid was constructed, the first smooth-sided real pyramid was made by the pyramid pioneer, Pharaoh Snefru. The success of this novel idea would depend on a crucial engineering choice. How steeply should the sides rise? The pyramid would be heavier and taller if the angle were steeper. If it were too steep, it might be too heavy for the foundations. Initially, Snefru's architects decided on a 55-degree angle. Everything went smoothly, but the inside chambers of the pyramid started to show flaws halfway through construction. Only the margins of the pyramid depend on a solid stone base, according to a survey conducted by Italian archaeologists Rinaldi and Marolio. The pyramid itself is constructed on soft, slaty mud. This fragile core sank beneath the weight as the pyramid grew, and the architects needed to find a solution, or the pyramid would fall. Construction ceased. Their spectacular answer ultimately altered the build's entire course. The slope angle was reduced by the architects from 55 degrees to 43 degrees. As a result, the pyramid's height and weight were lowered by 100 feet and almost 400,000 tons respectively. The pharaoh was likely incensed by the engineer's error, but their fix worked. Major pyramids would never again be constructed at such a sharp angle, but the bent pyramid, as it is now known, is still standing 4,500 years later, despite its somewhat odd shape. Snefru's architects were understandably careful when designing his second pyramid, the Red Pyramid, which stands at a mere 45 degrees and has the shallowest angle of any Egyptian pyramid, making it the earliest real smooth-sided pyramid in Egypt to this day. Following this triumph, the builders gained confidence and continued to build at an ever-increasing angle, which eventually resulted in the Great Pyramid's 480-foot peak, with its sides climbing at an inclination of just under 52 degrees. However, without the crane or block and tackle, how could they transport 2.5-ton blocks to such an amazing height? It presented a problem for the ancient Egyptians, and archaeologists today are still baffled by it. Mark Lehner is an Egyptologist who has studied the pyramids firsthand for 30 years. Where are the quarries? Was how I approached the question. In a functional slope, what form of ramp is possible to go from the quarry to the pyramid? The type of ramp that was used to raise the stone blocks is still unknown, but Lehner and nearly all Egyptologists agree that some sort of ramp was utilized. Did they circle the pyramid, zigzag up one side, or come directly up on it? The issue hasn't been fully resolved, but I have offered my recommendations, you know. The ramps were taken down after the pyramid was finished, so even though I tried to model them on the landscape, a lot of it is still based on interpretation. Archaeologists only have pieces of evidence, but ramps and sheer strength were what made it possible for millions of blocks to reach the summit. The builders had to connect the blocks after they were in place, which presented a fresh challenge. Surprisingly, for such a meticulous construction, many of the internal stones were only partially completed, with gypsum glue and rubble filling the spaces between them. In between the blocks were stuffed lots of limestone chippings mixed with huge dollops of mortar, and it's set just like modern concrete. However, every stone that would be in view after the construction was finished was positioned with incredible accuracy. In order to create these amazing joints, the sides of the blocks that made up the burial chamber in the Great Pyramid had to be nearly flat. The most basic of instruments were used to accomplish this precision engineering. Yes, to determine whether the surface is flat, we will use this rod and string tool. We can also see if it just glides under by using a third rod that is the same length as the other two rods connected by the string, which is now stretched extremely taut. We've got a little high spot there now. To remind the workers where to go and to check along the length of the string, they would simply mark that in the past by applying some red ochre. The ancient mason would mark areas that need further work with red ochre after using the rods and string to identify flaws. We can now use the marks as a guide to scrape away the high point in this manner using two additional tools, a flint scraper and a sandstone rubber, and it's clear that the mark and, naturally, the high place vanish as you scrape. The latter phase of the building likewise employed a similar method. A wonderfully smooth exterior shell of stone, carved from the finest grade limestone and transported across the Nile to the pyramid site, covered the rough inside pieces. The pyramid would have gleamed brilliantly in the Egyptian sun with this polished shell. But when the pyramids were newly encased in this special limestone, they must have been blinding in the sun, like newly fallen snow. Each casing stone was carved to precisely align with its neighbors to accomplish this. Thousands of these facing stones covered the Great Pyramid of Giza when it was finished, but they have long since disappeared, having been transported to construct Cairo's castles and mosques. However, facing stones are still visible on the top of Snefru's pyramid. The construction of the pyramids took millions of man-hours to finish, despite the Egyptians' extensive knowledge and equipment. Forensic archaeological discoveries are now putting a face on the people who built the pyramids, dispelling long-held myths that they were constructed by legions of slaves. The pyramids' construction was a massive undertaking that required an amazing amount of resources and labor. According to ancient accounts, 100,000 men worked on the Great Pyramid for 20 years. However, contemporary scholars think that 25,000 workers is a more accurate estimate. The workmen would have contributed more than 250 million man-hours to the project, which was finished during the 23-year reign of Pharaoh Khufu. The builders would have needed to procure materials from all throughout ancient Egypt, despite its wealth, as the enormous granite slabs needed to be floated 600 kilometers down the Nile from the quarries at Aswan. Even a contemporary engineering firm would struggle to keep a pyramid construction on schedule. Craig Smith is an engineer who has managed large construction sites and has studied the potential functioning of a pyramid build. Cell phones, pagers, and laptop computers are all absent from your possession. There are millions of pieces of stuff that need to get there at the appropriate moment. Egyptians tracked thousands of people and millions of raw materials, but their communications relied on papyrus and messengers on foot. Where the Egyptians likely used the stars to align the pyramids, we would use lasers. Where the Egyptians utilized simple ramps, we would employ huge tower cranes to hoist the stones. A modern pyramid builder would have access to all the advantages of current technology. Building supplies would now be transported to the site by motorized vehicles, whereas the Egyptians had only slow-moving boats and their might. Craig Smith has estimated how much it would cost to construct the Great Pyramid in modern currency. If you did it with limestone, it'd be about $4 billion and would take about 4 years. Compared to the estimated 23 years needed to construct the Great Pyramid, that is a significant reduction. However, the magnitude of their accomplishment should not be understated. For 23 years, the ancient Egyptian artisans would have needed to put 270 blocks daily, or one every 2 minutes. In addition to its immense size, the pyramid was constructed with eternity in mind. We haven't built anything of that scale in recent times that probably has any likelihood of lasting 4,500 years. Just the Great Pyramid was a feat of human creativity. Amazingly, however, the Egyptians constructed 17 more large pyramids. This 5th-century pyramid-building epic was arguably the most ambitious construction endeavor ever. Although the names of the pharaohs who ordered these pyramids are known, it has long been unclear who constructed them, until now. The pharaoh was said to have never made his people work year after year to build the pyramids. Rather, it was thought that slave labor, possibly from the Israelites, was used to construct them. The beliefs about who built the pyramids have been drastically altered by the discoveries made by archaeologists who have recently investigated the areas surrounding the Giza pyramids. The tombs of the real pyramid builders have been found by renowned Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass, who was taken aback by the intricate design of the tombs, which do not appear to be simple slave burial sites. Those who constructed the pyramids would never ever be buried beneath the pyramid's shadow if they were slaves. They would never prepare their tombs for eternity like kings and queens if they were slaves. We are finally able to view pyramid construction from the viewpoint of the laborers, thanks to Dr. Hawass's work. Before our discovery, we knew a lot about kings and queens, but we knew nothing about the people who really worked in building the pyramid. However, who were the real employees? The emerging field of forensic Egyptology provides the solution. CAT scans and 3D imaging bring the faces of the ancient Egyptians back to life from mummified skulls, and Egyptologist Rosalie David collaborates with scientists and artists to reconstruct the lives of the men who constructed the pyramids. The visage of an Egyptian who lived thousands of years ago has been recreated. You do get an idea of the person's personality. They stop being a dry skeletons or an elderly mummy, and there they are, complete with flesh, eyes, and hair. Someone who might yet be alive today is in front of you. The workers on the pyramid were not foreign slaves, as demonstrated by forensic examination of their bones. It is completely false to claim that slaves constructed the pyramids. The evidence from archaeology has demonstrated this. Every analysis of the bodies reveals that they are Egyptians and not foreigners. Broken limbs have been fixed, and one skull even has indications of early brain surgery, all of which are evident in the bones. Such excellent medical care would never have been available to foreign slaves. However, where was this indigenous labor force located? The settlement of the pyramid builders must have been close to the Giza Plateau, according to Mark Lehner. In the 3rd millennium BC, it would have been one of the biggest cities in the world if there were 20,000 people, let alone 30,000. Where was it then? Furthermore, where was the infrastructure? Lehner made his breakthrough when he dug up a location near the laborers' tombs, southeast of the pyramids. Everywhere we put down an excavation trench, we find large, substantial mud brick walls, evidence of an ancient settlement. More and more details about the lives of the pyramid builders are revealed by the layout of this long-hidden settlement. The footprint of this lost city tells us something about how they organized their society in this very early period when they built pyramids. Lehner's team discovered evidence that the craftspeople were adequately fed, which may have been the most organizational difficulty. It's evident from the remains discovered on the site that the pyramid builders were fed a lot of food, including meat, fish, and beer. They had excellent organization. They had a healthy diet. Because they were so vital, they were taken care of. However, it seems that even better care may have been given to the middle management. They were consuming a lot of meat, mostly cattle, but also goat and sheep. They had a great meal, but we noticed that some of the users on the site had better meals than others. According to Mark Lehner, this core group of authorities and skilled artisans remained on the property, but peasants who came to work there for a few months or years were responsible for carrying the blocks. For these unskilled laborers, building pyramids was similar to serving in the military. This army was assembled from all around Egypt, but instead of fighting, they came to build. What really fascinates me about the pyramids is not so much the king or the little man in the trenches, but the whole human network that could create something like the Great Pyramid of Khufu. However, why did the ancient Egyptians invest so much time and effort in building the pyramids? For what reason were hundreds of men sent from all over the nation to work here? These inquiries have captivated archaeologists as they attempt to unravel the third great mystery of the pyramids. What were they? In medieval times, it was believed that the pyramids were the enormous granaries of the biblical figure Joseph. However, the majority of contemporary Egyptologists think that the pyramids are the largest and most magnificent tombs ever constructed, belonging to the pharaohs. Dr. Hawass is certain that there is sufficient written evidence to demonstrate that the pyramids were constructed as tombs for the pharaohs, even though no mummy has ever been found in the Great Pyramid of Khufu's so-called burial chamber. And no pharaoh remains have ever been found inside a pyramid due to centuries of tomb raiding. There is lots of evidence in inscriptions and literature telling us that this is a tomb for the king. However, a pharaoh's tomb was more than just a place for his body to rest. Evidence of another, more magical purpose can be found deep within some pyramids, which were constructed as portals to the stars. The pyramids, the world's largest stone monuments, were constructed by the ancient Egyptians using a significant deal of personnel and resources. Although they are thought to have been built as tombs, their actual significance to the pharaoh and Egypt itself was not known for generations. Until a fortunate discovery in 1879, these silent giants guarded their secrets. The jackal appeared to be taunting the worker, practically begging to be pursued, as he passed one of the later Saqqara pyramids around dawn. After that, the worker trailed the animal into a hole close to the pyramid. He was shocked to discover that he was in a room. He raised his lantern to reveal hieroglyphics all over the walls. For thousands of years, these holy texts had been concealed. An expert on these hieroglyphs, also known as pyramid texts, James Allen feels that they provide us with a special understanding of the pyramid builder's goals. They are the oldest religious texts known from Egypt, which makes them one of the oldest bodies of religious texts in the world. Although the scriptures did not disclose the construction process of the buildings, they did disclose the pyramid's ultimate function. The pyramids were constructed as enormous devices for transforming humans into gods, not just as resting places for the pharaohs. The pyramid resembles a cosmic motor. Its purpose is to give life to the deceased creature beneath it. The ancient Egyptians thought that Egypt and life itself were in grave danger when the ruler passed away. The ruler had to defend his nation against starvation, drought, and the forces of disorder even after he passed away. Along with food, clothing, gems, and treasures, everything the mummified pharaoh would require in the afterlife in the stars, he was transported into his enormous tomb. Salima Ikram has researched the ideas of ancient Egyptians regarding the afterlife. The main idea is that it's a lot like this life, except better. Therefore, you can have anything you desire in the hereafter if you can place it in your tomb. The rites performed over the pharaoh's mummified body to make sure he survived his journey to the afterlife are documented in the pyramid texts. They also contained prayers and rituals to keep him safe. Magic is often associated with abracadabra, wizards, witches, and Harry Potter. The ancient Egyptians believed that magic existed throughout the cosmos. This was the science of survival for the Egyptians. Ancient Egypt did not have superstitious mumbo-jumbo. Everything has a purpose. After the ceremonies were over, the pyramid was sealed, hopefully for all eternity, because everything has a purpose. In order to be reborn as an eternal star, The pharaoh was then free to travel to the afterlife. However, according to Robert Bauval, who has written a lot on the pyramids, there is more to the relationship between the pyramids and the stars. He has long been fascinated by the connections between astronomy and Egyptian religion. An overhead view of the Giza pyramids served as the initial inspiration. A striking pattern caught Bauval's attention. I was looking at monuments that had been laid according to a plan. There were two large pyramids set along a diagonal. But what bugged me, what really got me, was there was a third, smaller one, offset from the diagonal. He was reminded of the stars in the belt of Orion by this flawed diagonal. It has one offset dimmer star and two brilliant stars. The three stars appeared to correspond with the relative sizes and locations of the three Giza pyramids. Some Egyptologists believe that Bauval's theory is merely coincidental. If you look at the stars in the Orion constellation, you'll find that they do not fit with all the Old Kingdom pyramids at all. You'll find maybe very few. With a computer, you can really match this. According to Dr. Hawass, the design of any pyramid on the ground does not correspond with the pattern of many other stars in the constellation of Orion. Robert Bauval, however, saw the correspondence as unmistakable proof of an astronomical master plan that outlined the Great Pyramid's layout and design. You cannot deny the fact that there are three stars that look like the plan of the pyramids, two large ones and a small one offset. Two large pyramids, a small one offset. That is a fact. It's a fact. What isn't a fact is whether it is a coincidence or not. Another strong piece of evidence supporting Bauval's astronomical theory can be found in the pyramid's overall design. The Great Pyramid's construction includes four slender shafts. They are only 8 inches wide and ascend toward the surface from the king's and queen's chambers through the solid stone interior. As the pyramid ascended, they were meticulously incorporated into every stone stratum for more than 200 feet. These stone shafts might provide answers to some of the pyramid's final unsolved puzzles. The shafts were first believed to have been built as air vents to supply the pyramid's laborers with fresh air. But these shafts are much more important to Bauval. He felt like he was deciphering a code as he looked at their orientation, a pattern that was ingrained in the pyramid itself. But it was exciting to realize that I was beginning to listen to the silent language of the pyramid. According to Bauval, every one of the Great Pyramid's 4 shafts is oriented to face a major star. Furthermore, the ancient Egyptian religion placed a great deal of importance on each of these stars. One of the southern shafts points to Al-Nitak, a star in Orion's belt, while the other points to Sirius, the goddess Isis's opposite. The Egyptian deity of death and resurrection, Osiris, had a celestial counterpart in this constellation. By aligning the star shafts in this manner, the pharaoh's spirit may ascend to heaven and become a star beside the god Osiris. This insight felt to Bauval like the solution to an old puzzle. So we have a kind of language, if you like. I call it astro-architecture. The pyramid speaks through its architecture and through its symbolic astronomy. Other riddles and rumors continue to surround the shafts, even though some Egyptologists completely reject Bauval's theory. According to Dr. Hawass, these might lead to hidden riches at the base of the pyramid. The Great Pyramid at Giza has a labyrinth of shafts and chambers, and researchers have already found 3 potential antechambers connected by corridors, including the majestic Grand Gallery. If I'm correct, this will be the most significant find in Egypt and the entire globe. However, 4 enigmatic shafts that flow from the king and queen's rooms toward the surface have drawn attention in recent years. There are legends of hidden rooms and astrological connections surrounding these tight passageways. A French team used microgravimetric techniques, which measure changes in an object's density, to analyze the Great Pyramid's construction in the 1980s. They found a number of places with different densities, which may indicate that the pyramid's summit contains unknown chambers. A German robotics team, led by Dr. Zahi Hawass, explored the tunnels in the Queen's Chamber in 1993, and their findings shocked Egyptology. After precisely 200 feet, the robot came to a stop in front of a door with two copper knobs, and a solid slab of limestone filled the southern shaft, preventing the robot from continuing its exploration. The slab was just 3 inches deep according to remote sensing methods similar to those used to locate earthquake survivors. And a different crew returned in 2002 with a more sophisticated robot that was equipped with drilling tools meant to cut through the limestone panel. The robot scaled the narrow shaft and drilled a tiny hole through which a tiny camera could pass, revealing something completely unexpected: another limestone door across the shaft. While some observers were disappointed, Dr. Hawass saw this as a significant discovery. The doors of Alibaba and the 40 Thieves are not what we are searching for. Archaeology is what we are searching for. Furthermore, anything found inside the pyramid is a significant finding. There is a section of the pyramid behind this second door that has not been seen in over 4,000 years. Dr. Hawass is now prepared to return to the Great Pyramid and thinks he might discover the greatest archaeological treasure. He thinks a secret chamber might be beneath the limestone slab. I still believe that the burial chamber of Khufu is still hidden inside the pyramid, that we're going to go through the first door and the second door to find out what is the mystery behind them. Even more significant than the finding of King Tut's tomb, the tomb could be the biggest find ever if Dr. Hawass finds it. This could be the final enigma of the pyramids, the last resting place of one of the greatest pharaohs, Khufu, which has been sealed since the day the pyramid was finished and was shining in the desert sun. The only surviving wonder of the ancient world is the Great Pyramid, which has lost 30 feet of height since it was constructed and has long since lost its polished stone casing. However, it may take an additional 65,000 years before it vanishes from the skyline, even at that rate. Towering over history itself, the pyramids are a tribute to the amazing skills of their builders. Despite all the obstacles, they stand there as one of humanity's greatest accomplishments, both past and present. They proclaim immortality thousands of years later. According to an old Arab saying, "Time fears the pyramid, but man fears time."